AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our grandparents left me after she told everyone it was supposed to be hers. I, 29F, grew up very close to my grandparents. They lived about 20 minutes away, and I spent most weekends at their house from the time I was little. My parents both worked long hours, and my grandparents loved having me around, so it just became the routine. My sister, Lena, 32F, didn't visit as often. She was more into sports and activities, and honestly just wasn't as interested in spending quiet time with them. There was never any drama about it growing up. It was just how things were. Their house isn't some huge mansion, but it is a nice, older home in a good neighborhood that has been in the family for decades. My grandpa used to joke that the house had good bones and stubborn walls. Over the years, I helped them with a lot of things. When I was a teenager, I'd mow the lawn, clean the garage, help my grandma with groceries, and when I got older, I'd drive them to doctor appointments. After I finished college, I even moved into their spare room for about a year to help out when my grandpa's health started declining. Lena lived in another city by then. She visited on holidays and birthdays, but otherwise wasn't very involved. Again, no one really fought about it. She had her own life. When my grandpa passed away 3 years ago, my grandma was devastated and her health declined quickly after that. I ended up helping even more during that time. I handled errands, managed a lot of paperwork, and was basically the person who was there day to day. My grandma and I got really close during that time. She passed away last year. A few weeks after the funeral, we found out through the lawyer that my grandparents had left the house to me. Apparently, they updated their will a few years before my grandpa died. I was shocked and honestly emotional about it. I never asked for the house, and I assumed, if anything, it would go to both of us or maybe be sold and split. But the will was very clear. The house was left entirely to me. The lawyer explained that my grandparents wrote a note attached to the will saying they wanted the house to stay with someone who cared for it and had memories there. They also left Lena some money from their savings, which was a decent amount, but obviously not equal to the value of the house. At first, Lena seemed fine. She didn't say much during the meeting, but she hugged me and said our grandparents always loved the house. I told her we could always work something out if she wanted to visit or keep things from the house. For about 2 months, everything was quiet. Then suddenly I started getting weird messages from extended family. My aunt called asking if it was true that I had taken the house from Lena. One cousin messaged me asking why I would fight my sister over property. I had no idea what they were talking about. Eventually, one of my cousins sent me screenshots from a group chat where Lena had been telling people that her grandparents originally intended the house for her, but that I had pressured them while living there and convinced them to change the will. That is completely false. I never even knew they had changed it until after they died. When I confronted Lena, she doubled down and said that morally the house should be hers because she is the older sibling and because houses usually go to the oldest. I told her that's not actually a rule and also reminded her she hadn't lived near them in years. She said that didn't matter and accused me of manipulating 2 elderly people. That honestly hurt more than anything. My grandparents were not easily manipulated people. They were sharp and stubborn right up until the end. Then Lena asked me to sign the house over to her. Not sell it to her. Just give it to her. When I said no, she got angry and told me I was destroying our relationship over a house. Since then, she's continued telling relatives that I stole something that belonged to her. Some family members now believe her and say I should do the right thing and give her half or even the whole property because it would keep the peace. But here's the thing. I live in the house now. I fixed the roof last summer, replaced some old plumbing, and I'm slowly restoring parts of it the way my grandparents always wanted. It feels like home to me. It also feels like the last connection I have to them. I told Lena she is always welcome to visit and that I would happily give her anything sentimental from inside the house. But I'm not giving away the house itself. Now my parents are begging me to reconsider because the family drama has gotten exhausting for them. My mom even said that technically I could afford to move somewhere else while Lena can't buy a house right now. I understand that this situation sucks. I also understand that Lena probably feels left out or hurt by the will. But I didn't write it. And I can't shake the feeling that giving her the house would basically mean ignoring what my grandparents specifically chose. Still, with so many relatives saying I should be the bigger person, I'm starting to wonder if I'm being selfish for keeping it. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our grandparents left me after she told everyone it was supposed to be hers? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's family healing dinner after she revealed the real reason she ruined my engagement. I, 32M, used to be very close with my younger sister, Mia, 29F. Growing up, we were the classic sibling duo. We shared secrets, covered for each other with our parents, and even lived together briefly after college to save money. If someone had asked me 5 years ago who in my family I trusted the most, I would have said Mia without hesitation. That is why what happened 2 years ago completely blindsided me. At the time, I was engaged to my ex-fiancée, Claire, 31F. We had been together for 4 years and had already started planning our wedding. We had booked a venue, sent out save the dates, and even picked out a small house we wanted to buy together after the wedding. About 3 months before the wedding, Claire suddenly started acting distant. She would avoid conversations about the wedding and spent more time out with friends. I assumed it was stress because wedding planning was getting chaotic. Then one night, she sat me down and told me she needed to cancel the wedding. I was shocked. Her explanation barely made sense. She said she had learned things about me that made her question our future. When I asked what things, she was vague and said she did not want to start drama in my family. Eventually, she admitted that Mia had told her some disturbing stories about me. According to Claire, my sister claimed I had cheated on Claire earlier in our relationship and that I had a history of lying to girlfriends. She also told Claire that I had massive hidden debt and was planning to rely on Claire financially once we were married. None of that was true, not even remotely. I tried to defend myself, but Claire kept saying she trusted Mia because Mia was my sister and supposedly had no reason to lie. Within a week, the wedding was canceled. That was one of the worst periods of my life. Not only was my relationship over, but several mutual friends assumed the rumors were true. I confronted Mia immediately, and she denied everything. She said Claire must have misunderstood something or was looking for an excuse to leave. Because Claire refused to show me the messages and Mia stuck to her story, I never had proof. My parents believed Mia and told me move on. So I did, or at least I tried to. 2 years later, I am doing much better. I have a new job and recently started dating someone new. My relationship with Mia became distant but civil. We see each other at holidays but rarely speak otherwise. Last weekend, my parents invited me to dinner and said Mia wanted to host a family healing dinner to repair relationships. I almost declined, but my parents insisted it would be good for everyone. About halfway through the dinner, Mia suddenly got emotional and started crying. She said she had been carrying guilt for years and wanted to be honest. She admitted that she did in fact tell Claire those lies. The room went silent. Her explanation was that at the time, she had just gone through a terrible breakup and was living alone for the first time. She said she felt abandoned because once I got married, I would forget about her. She admitted she panicked and convinced herself that if she scared Claire away, she could buy more time with our close sibling relationship. I honestly thought she was joking, but she kept crying and saying she never expected the wedding to actually be canceled. She thought Claire would confront me and we would fight and delay the wedding, not break up entirely. My parents immediately shifted into comfort mode for Mia. My mom hugged her and said she was brave for telling the truth. My dad said people make mistakes when they are hurting. Meanwhile, I was just sitting there trying to process the fact that my sister knowingly destroyed my engagement out of jealousy. Then Mia said something that pushed me over the edge. She looked at me and said she hoped this confession could be the first step toward rebuilding our bond because she missed how close we used to be. I stood up and told her that her mistake cost me my relationship, my reputation, and entire future I had been building. I said that was not a misunderstanding or a moment of panic. It was months of deliberate lying. My parents got upset and said I should show compassion because Mia was clearly remorseful. I told them remorse 2 years later does not undo what she did. Before leaving, I told Mia that I could eventually be polite at family events, but I was not interested in rebuilding the kind of relationship we used to have. Now my parents are pressuring me again. They say Mia wants to host another dinner specifically to heal the siblings and talk things through. They think refusing will keep the family stuck in resentment. I told them I am not going. They say I am holding on to anger and punishing Mia forever, even though she admitted the truth. I feel like they are ignoring the fact that if she had never confessed, everyone would still believe I was the bad guy. So AITA for refusing to attend this family healing dinner after learning my sister intentionally sabotaged my engagement. AITA for refusing to give my brother the house our parents left me, even though his family needs it more. I, 31M, lost both of my parents last year in a car accident. It was sudden and horrible, and the whole thing still feels unreal sometimes. They owned a small 3-bedroom house in the town where we grew up. It is not a huge place, but it is fully paid off and in a pretty decent area. I have one brother, Mark, 35M. Mark is married and has 3 kids. I am single and live alone. Growing up, Mark and I were never very close. He moved out early, got married young, and mostly focused on his own life. I stayed closer to our parents and visited them often. I helped them with repairs, groceries, and doctor appointments as they got older. After the funeral, the will was read. This is where the problem started. My parents left the house to me. They also left Mark a larger portion of their savings and investment account. According to the lawyer, the overall value is meant to be roughly equal. The house itself is worth more on paper, but it is not liquid money, and I still have to cover taxes and maintenance. Mark seemed surprised, but did not say anything at first. About 2 months later, he came to visit me at the house. I had moved in because my apartment lease was ending and it made sense financially. During the visit, he started talking about how cramped his current living situation was. He and his family are in a small 2-bedroom apartment, and apparently the kids share one room. Then he said something that caught me off guard. He told me the house should really go to him. His reasoning was that I am single and do not need 3 bedrooms, while he has a wife and 3 kids. He said it would make more sense for a family to live here instead of just one person. I reminded him that the house was left to me in the will. He said our parents probably assumed I would do the right thing and let his family have it. That comment honestly hurt. I told him that I had spent years helping our parents with the house and their care while he rarely visited. He got defensive and said he had his own family to worry about. Then he suggested a solution. He wanted me to sign the house over to him and move into a small condo using part of the savings he inherited. Basically, he keeps the house, and I downgrade my living situation using money that was never intended for me. I told him no. He got angry and said I was being selfish and punishing his kids. I said the will was very clear and that this was what our parents decided. Since then, the situation has escalated. My sister-in-law has messaged me multiple times saying I am breaking the family apart and that their kids deserve a yard and more space. A few extended relatives have also weighed in, saying it would be the generous thing to do. One of my aunts even said that my parents probably expected me to share. What bothers me most is that no one seems to acknowledge the financial side of this. If I give them a house, I lose the biggest asset I have. Housing prices here are high, and I might never be able to buy something similar again. Meanwhile, Mark still has the savings and investments that were left to him. He recently came by again and told me his landlord is raising their rent soon and that they might have to move farther away. He said if that happens, it will be my fault for not helping. I feel guilty when I think about the kids because they are innocent in all this. At the same time, this house is the last big thing my parents left me. I also genuinely believe they made this decision intentionally. For some extra context, Mark and his wife both work, but they have struggled financially for years due to credit card debt and some bad spending habits. This is something my parents complained about privately several times before they passed. Part of me wonders if my parents gave me the house specifically because they were worried Mark might sell it or borrow against it. I have offered a compromise. I said they could stay in the house temporarily if they paid a small amount toward utilities while they saved for a better place. My brother refused because he said living in a house he does not own would make him feel like a tenant in his parents' home. Now, the family group chat has basically turned into a debate about me. Some relatives say I'm technically right, but morally wrong. Others think Mark is being entitled. I keep going back and forth in my head. I do not want to destroy my relationship with my brother, but I also do not think I should have to give up my inheritance. So now I'm sitting here in the living room of the house I grew up in, feeling like the villain in my own family story. AITA for refusing to give my brother the house our parents left me. AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our parents left me, even though she says I owe her for ruining her childhood. I, 34M, grew up with my younger sister Maya, 31F. Our parents owned a small 3-bedroom house that had been in my dad's family for decades. It wasn't fancy, but it was in a good neighborhood and had a lot of sentimental value for our family. When we were kids, Maya and I had a very different relationship with our parents. I was the good kid. I got good grades, helped around the house, and generally stayed out of trouble. Maya was more rebellious. She skipped school sometimes, argued with our parents constantly, and eventually moved out at 18 after a huge fight with our mom. For years after that, she barely spoke to them. She would show up occasionally during holidays, but usually leave early because she said our parents were judging her. Meanwhile, I stayed close with them. I lived nearby, helped them with groceries, took them to appointments, and fixed things around the house whenever something broke. About 6 years ago, our dad passed away. It was really hard on all of us, but especially on our mom. Maya came to the funeral, but left right after and didn't really help with anything. Over the next few years, I visited Mom several times a week. She started having mobility issues and needed help with basic stuff like yard work and driving. 2 years ago, Mom passed away as well. When the will was read, the house was left entirely to me. There were a few smaller things divided between us, like jewelry and some savings, but the house itself was mine. Maya immediately got upset. She said it wasn't fair and that Mom had clearly favored me. To be clear, I didn't ask for the house. Mom made that decision on her own. I suspect it's because I was the one helping her maintain it and living nearby while Maya had moved to another state. At the time, Maya demanded we sell the house and split the money. I refused because I planned to move into it. My apartment lease was ending, and I also felt attached to the place since it's where we grew up. Maya accused me of stealing her inheritance. We argued a lot, and then mostly stopped talking for about a year. Recently, Maya reached out again. At first, I thought maybe she wanted to reconcile. Instead, she told me she and her husband are struggling financially and want to move back to our hometown. She asked if I would do the right thing and give them the house since they have 2 kids and need the space more. I told her I wasn't giving away my home. I've already spent a lot fixing it up, including replacing the roof and renovating the kitchen. I also reminded her that she received half of our mom's savings and several valuable items that I didn't contest. She got really emotional and said the reason she had such a bad relationship with our parents was partly my fault. According to her, I was always the perfect child, which made our parents compare her to me and made her feel like she could never measure up. She said that because I benefited from being the favorite, I should share the house now to make things fair. I honestly didn't know how to respond to that. I never tried to compete with her or make her look bad. I was just living my life. But she insists that my existence basically ruined her childhood and that I owe her something now. Our conversation got heated. I told her that while I'm sorry she felt that way growing up, it doesn't mean I should give up the house our mom legally left to me. Now some extended family members are involved. A couple of my aunts say that since Maya has kids, I should at least consider letting them live there while I move somewhere smaller. Others say the will is the will and Maya is being entitled. Maya has been texting me long messages saying I'm selfish and that our parents would be disappointed in me for not helping my own sister. I feel bad that she's struggling, and I do care about my niece and nephew, but at the same time, this is my home now. I've built my life around staying here. Still, the guilt is getting to me because part of me wonders if maybe I did have an easier relationship with our parents and benefited from that. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our parents left to me? AITA for refusing to cancel my wedding venue after my sister announced she wants to get married there first? 28F, am getting married this fall to my fiance Daniel, 30M. We got engaged last year and have been slowly planning the wedding since then. Neither of us wanted something huge or overly complicated, but we did want a nice venue where both our families could celebrate together. After months of searching, we finally booked a historic garden venue about an hour outside the city. It's a beautiful place with an old stone building, a courtyard, and a large garden where the ceremony takes place. I completely fell in love with it the first time we visited. The venue is very popular and usually booked more than a year in advance, but by some miracle they had one Saturday available that worked for us. We paid the deposit, signed a contract, and started planning everything around that date. My sister Rachel, 31F, has been dating her boyfriend Mark for about 3 years. For most of that time, she insisted she didn't believe in marriage and would joke that she was the cool aunt who would never settle down. Because of that, no one expected her to get engaged anytime soon. When Daniel and I booked our venue last November, Rachel even helped me look at decoration ideas and said she was excited for the wedding. Then in January, Mark proposed. I was genuinely happy for her. We celebrated together with our parents, and everything seemed fine. At the time, Rachel said they were thinking of having a small wedding sometime next year because they hadn't saved much yet. Fast forward to about 2 months ago. Rachel asked me which venue Daniel and I booked because she said she was curious. I showed her pictures and told her the name of the place. She immediately said it looked amazing and that she might check it out too, but I didn't think much of it. About a week later, she called me sounding excited and told me she had toured the venue. Then she said something that confused me. She said the venue only had one date left before next year and that she and Mark were thinking of taking it. I asked which date. It was the same weekend as my wedding, just a Friday instead of Saturday. At first, I thought it was kind of funny. I said it would be wild if we had back-to-back weddings there. But Rachel then said something that caught me off guard. She said it would probably make more sense if I moved my wedding so theirs could be on the Saturday instead. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Rachel explained that since she is the older sister, it would be more appropriate for her to have the main weekend date. She also said that Friday weddings are inconvenient for guests and that people would have to take time off work. I reminded her that Daniel and I already signed a contract and paid a non-refundable deposit months ago. Also, most of our vendors are already booked for that day. She said that shouldn't matter because family should come first. I told her the obvious solution was that she could keep the Friday if she liked the venue that much. She got quiet and then said she didn't want a secondary day wedding when her younger sister had the better date. Since then, things have escalated. Rachel has been telling relatives that I purposely chose a venue she loved and am now refusing to compromise. This is confusing because she didn't even know about the place until after I booked it. My mom called me last week and suggested that maybe Daniel and I could move our wedding to a later date so Rachel and Mark could have the Saturday. Apparently, Rachel told my parents that as the older sibling, she should get priority for big life milestones. Daniel was stunned when he heard this. He said we've already spent months planning, and he doesn't understand why we should rearrange everything just because my sister suddenly wants the same venue. I agree with him, but the family pressure is getting intense. My parents say that if Rachel has the Friday wedding, a lot of family members will need to travel twice in 2 days or stay overnight, which might be inconvenient. Rachel also accused me of trying to steal the spotlight because apparently 2 weddings in one weekend will make hers feel less special. The thing is, I never asked her to choose the same venue or even the same weekend. There are dozens of other venues in the area and plenty of dates next year. But she is now insisting that if I loved her, I would move my wedding so she could have the Saturday. I told her that I'm not canceling contracts, losing deposits, and rearranging everything just to satisfy that demand. She called me selfish and hung up. Now, several relatives are saying that technically I could change the date while Rachel can't because she hasn't booked anything yet, which somehow makes it my responsibility. Daniel thinks the whole situation is ridiculous and says we should ignore the drama and keep our plans exactly as they are. But part of me wonders if I'm creating a bigger family conflict by refusing to move the wedding. So AITA for refusing to cancel or move my wedding venue after my sister decided she wants to get married there first. AITA for refusing to give my brother the house our grandparents left me, even though my entire family says it should be his. I, 34F, recently inherited my grandparents' house, and now my entire family is acting like I stole something that never belonged to me in the first place. My grandparents had 3 kids: my mom, my aunt, and my uncle. My uncle is the father of my cousin Eric, 36M. Growing up, my grandparents were a huge part of my life. They lived only about 20 minutes away, and I spent most weekends there helping the garden, baking with my grandma, or watching old movies with my grandpa. Eric, on the other hand, lived about an hour away. He visited during holidays and sometimes in the summer, but he was never around nearly as often as I was. This is not me trying to compete or anything. It is just the reality of distance and schedules. When my grandma's health started declining about 6 years ago, I began helping more regularly. I drove her to doctor appointments, helped with groceries, and sometimes stayed overnight when my grandpa was overwhelmed. When my grandpa later developed mobility problems, I helped with that too. I never thought of it as some kind of sacrifice or favor. They were my grandparents, and I loved them. Eric visited sometimes during that period, but usually for short visits. He has a demanding job and a family, so I never judged him for that. 2 years ago, my grandpa passed away, and my grandma followed last year. It was devastating for the whole family. A few weeks after the funeral, we learned that my grandparents had left a will. In it, they left the house to me. This was a complete shock. The house itself is not a mansion, but it is in a nice area and worth quite a lot now because property prices exploded in the last decade. It is the house they lived in for over 40 years. When the will was read, everyone looked surprised, including me. Eric immediately asked the lawyer if there had been some kind of mistake. The lawyer confirmed there was not. My grandparents had updated the will about 3 years before my grandpa died. At the time, Eric did not say much else, but later he called me and asked if we could talk. We met for coffee, and he told me that while he understood the will said the house was mine, he felt morally it should belong to him. His reasoning was that he had always assumed he would inherit it because he was the oldest grandchild and had talked with my grandpa years ago about maybe raising his family there someday. I told him I had never heard anything about that. Eric then suggested that I could sign the house over to him, and he would make it right financially by paying me something later once he refinanced. But he admitted he could not afford the full value. I said I needed time to think about everything. Meanwhile, the rest of the family found out about our conversation, and suddenly everyone had an opinion. My aunt said the house should stay in her side of the family because it came from her parents. My mom told me she understood both sides, but hinted that keeping the house might create permanent tension. Then Eric's wife called me and said their kids had already been told stories about living in that house someday, and that I was taking away a dream from them. That made me extremely uncomfortable because I never promised them anything. Here's another part that complicates things. In the will, my grandparents also left a letter explaining their decision. The lawyer gave it only to me because it was addressed to me. In the letter, they thanked me for helping them during their final years and said they wanted me to have a stable place to build my future. They also wrote that they knew the house would be emotionally meaningful to the family, but trusted me to decide what to do with it. So it was clearly intentional. Right now, I actually live in a small apartment, and the idea of moving into the house means a lot to me. It is full of memories, and it would give me financial stability I have never had before. But every time I mention keeping it, my family reacts like I'm selfish. Last week, things escalated when Eric invited me to dinner with several relatives and basically staged what felt like an intervention. Everyone talked about how important the house is to family legacy and how Eric's kids deserve to grow up there. I finally said that our grandparents made their decision, and I am not going to give away something they chose to leave to me. The room got very quiet. My aunt said I was being cold and transactional. Eric looked genuinely hurt and said he thought I would do the right thing once emotions settled. Now, my mom keeps calling me asking if I am really willing to damage family relationships over a house. From my perspective, I did not take anything from anyone. I simply inherited what my grandparents chose to give me. But the pressure from everyone is making me question myself. So, AITA for refusing to give my cousin the house my grandparents left to me? AITA for refusing to cancel my wedding after my sister announced she was pregnant and said my wedding date would stress her out? I, 29F, am getting married in about 3 months to my fiancé Daniel, 30M. We have been together for 5 years and engaged for a little over a year. Planning the wedding has been a long process because we are paying for most of it ourselves and trying to keep everything within a reasonable budget. My sister, Rachel, 32F, has always been a very big personality in the family. Growing up, she was the one who needed the most attention. If something good happened to someone else, she usually found a way to make the moment about her somehow. I say this not to insult her, but because it is honestly just how she has always been. When Daniel proposed, my family was happy for us, and Rachel seemed supportive at first. She was even excited about being a bridesmaid and helped me look at venues online. Eventually, we picked a date that worked with the venue we loved and with Daniel's family traveling from out of state. Everything was set about 9 months ago. 3 weeks ago, we had a family dinner where Rachel announced she is pregnant. Everyone was excited and congratulated her. I was genuinely happy for her too, because she had mentioned before that she and her husband had been trying. At the dinner, she casually mentioned that her due date is about 3 weeks after my wedding. At the time, I did not think much of it. Plenty of people attend weddings while pregnant. Rachel even joked about needing a dress with extra room, and we all laughed about it. 2 days later, she called me. At first, the call was normal, but then she told me she had been thinking and that my wedding date was actually going to be a problem for her. She said being in the 3rd trimester would make traveling and standing during the ceremony uncomfortable. I told her she could sit whenever she needed to and that we would adjust anything to make it easier. Then she said something that shocked me. She asked if I could move the wedding, not by a week or 2, but by several months. She said it would be less stressful for her if the wedding happened after the baby was born, so she could properly enjoy it and participate as a bridesmaid. I explained that we already paid deposits for the venue, catering, photographer, and DJ. Moving the date would cost thousands of euros, and some vendors might not even be available later. Rachel said that money should not matter compared to family. I told her that Daniel and I saved for a long time to afford this wedding, and losing those deposits would seriously hurt us financially. She then suggested a different option. Cancel the big wedding entirely and do a small courthouse ceremony instead, then have a party sometime next year when she can attend comfortably with the baby. I was honestly stunned by that suggestion. I said no and told her we're not canceling the wedding we planned for over a year. She got quiet and then said she was disappointed that I was choosing a party over her health and the baby's well-being. I reminded her that the wedding date existed long before she got pregnant. Since that conversation, things have gotten messy. Rachel told my parents that the stress of the wedding could affect her pregnancy and that she feels pressured to participate even though it might be physically difficult. My parents have not directly asked me to change the date, but they keep suggesting that family harmony is more important than one day. My mom even asked if Daniel and I had considered something simpler. On top of that, Rachel has now said she might not come to the wedding at all if it stays on the same date. She also stepped down as a bridesmaid and told me she feels like I forced her into that decision. The weird part is that I never expected her to do anything physically demanding. I already told her she could skip walking down the aisle, sit during photos, or even just attend as a guest if she wanted. Daniel is fully on my side and thinks the request is ridiculous, but he is also worried this is going to create a permanent rift in my family. What makes me feel guilty is that Rachel keeps saying things like, I thought my sister would care more about me and her future niece or nephew than a wedding schedule. Some relatives have started messaging me, saying pregnancy is difficult and that I should be more understanding. Others say it is unfair to expect 2 people to rearrange an entire wedding because one guest is pregnant. At this point, I feel like no matter what I do, someone will be angry. If I move the wedding, we lose money and possibly our venue. If I do not move it, my sister might skip the wedding and blame me for causing stress during her pregnancy. Daniel keeps reminding me that this is supposed to be our day and that we should not rebuild the entire plan around someone else's life event. Still, the pressure from my family is starting to get to me, and I am wondering if I'm being stubborn. AITA for refusing to move or cancel my wedding because my sister is pregnant and says the timing is stressful for her. AITA for refusing to cancel my wedding after my cousin announced hers first, even though the dates are months apart. I, 29F, got engaged to my fiance Daniel, 31M, last year after being together for almost 6 years. We were both really excited and immediately started planning our wedding. Neither of us wanted a super long engagement because we had already talked about marriage for a while before the proposal. After visiting a few venues, we found one we loved. It had a garden ceremony area and a small lake behind it. The only date they had available that year was early September, so we booked it right away and paid the deposit. We told close family first, and everyone seemed happy for us. A few weeks later, my aunt called my mom and apparently sounded upset. My cousin Lily, 27F, her daughter, had also gotten engaged recently and had just started planning her wedding too. According to my aunt, Lily had always dreamed of a September wedding and now felt like I had taken her month. At first, I thought this was kind of ridiculous. There are 4 weekends in September and thousands of venues. But my aunt insisted Lily had talked about a September wedding for years and that I should consider moving mine. The problem is that we already paid deposits, not just for the venue, but also for the photographer, caterer, and DJ. The date works for Daniel's family, who have to travel from another state, and the weather where we live is best around that time. About a month later, Lily announced her wedding date. It was in late November of the same year. I congratulated her and assumed the issue was over. Then things got weird. Lily started making comments in family group chats about how stressful it is to plan a wedding when other people rush to the altar first. At one family dinner, she joked that she hopes guests will still have money left after my wedding. I tried to ignore it because I didn't want drama. 2 months ago, my aunt called again, this time asking if I would consider postponing my wedding to the following spring. Her reasoning was that Lily's fiancé has a lot of extended family traveling internationally, and they might not be able to attend both weddings so close together. I told her I wasn't willing to move the date. Aside from the deposits, Daniel and I already scheduled time off work and since saved the dates to guests. Also, the weddings are almost 3 months apart, which seems like plenty of time. My aunt said Lily feels like her special moment is being overshadowed because my wedding will happen first. Apparently, Lily thinks people will compare the 2 weddings or be less excited for hers since it's second. Things escalated last week at my grandmother's birthday dinner. Lily pulled me aside and said she wanted to talk honestly. She told me she feels like I'm stealing attention from her during what should be the most important time in her life. She said she got engaged only a few weeks after me, but waited to announce it publicly because she didn't want to take attention away from my engagement. According to her, the polite thing would have been for me to check if anyone else in the family was planning a wedding before locking in my date. I was honestly shocked by that. I told her I didn't think I needed to survey the entire family before booking a venue. I also reminded her that her wedding is still happening and people are perfectly capable of celebrating both events. She got upset and said that since my fiancé and I have stable jobs and already live together, we could easily wait another year. She and her fiancé, on the other hand, want to start trying for kids soon and feel pressured by the timeline. At that point, I told her I was sorry she felt that way, but I wasn't moving the wedding. She left the dinner early and later posted something vague on social media about how some people only care about themselves. Now several relatives have started messaging me. Some say Lily has always dreamed about a big wedding and I should be the bigger person. Others say she's being dramatic because the weddings aren't even in the same season. Daniel thinks the whole situation is ridiculous and says if we give in now, there will always be another demand. But I hate the idea of causing family tension, and part of me wonders if maybe I could have handled things differently at the start. Still, canceling or postponing the wedding would cost us thousands of dollars and create a lot of logistical problems. So AITA for refusing to change my wedding date, even though my cousin feels like I ruined her wedding experience? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to give my coworker credit for a project after she told our boss the idea was hers. I, 31M, work at a mid-sized marketing company. I've been there for about 5 years and generally like my job. The team I'm on is small, about 8 people, and we work on campaigns for several clients. It's a pretty collaborative environment, which is usually great, but can sometimes make it unclear who deserves credit for what. One of my coworkers, Emily, 29F, joined the team a little over a year ago. At first, we got along well. We worked on a couple of smaller projects together, and everything seemed normal. She's friendly and outgoing, which makes her well-liked in the office. About 4 months ago, our department got a new client that was a big deal for the company. The client is a growing brand that wants to expand internationally, so our team was tasked with creating a major campaign to help with that launch. Our boss made it clear that whoever led the most successful ideas on this project would likely be considered for a promotion later in the year. Naturally, everyone wanted to contribute something strong. For the first few weeks, we were in brainstorming mode. People would throw ideas around during meetings or in our shared chat channel. One afternoon, I was working late and started developing a concept involving a series of interactive online ads that would change depending on a user's location. The idea was that people in different cities would see slightly different visuals and references that felt local to them. I spent several days building a rough presentation for it and even mocked up some examples. Emily was one of the first people I showed it to because she sits next to me and we often give each other feedback. She said it looked great and suggested a few minor tweaks, which I appreciated. At that point, I still planned to present it myself at the next team meeting. A few days later, we had a meeting with our boss to discuss potential campaign directions. I had my presentation ready, but the meeting started a bit chaotically because several people were talking over each other about different concepts. Then Emily started describing the interactive location-based ad idea. At first, I thought she was just referencing my concept as part of the discussion, but she kept talking and presenting it like it was her own idea. She even used some of the exact phrases I had used when explaining it to her earlier. I was honestly stunned and didn't interrupt right away because I thought maybe she would mention that we had discussed it together. She didn't. Our boss loved the concept and asked Emily if she could lead the development of it. Emily immediately said yes. After the meeting, I pulled her aside and asked why she presented my idea as if it was hers. She looked confused and said that since we had talked about it together, she assumed it was more of a shared concept. I told her that I had already built most of the presentation and research for it before showing her anything. She shrugged and said that brainstorming at work is collaborative and that ideas don't really belong to one person. That didn't sit right with me, but at that point the boss had already approved the project direction. Over the next few weeks, Emily started leading the campaign meetings. I still had a lot of the research and materials, so the team kept asking me questions about certain details. Eventually, our boss noticed that I seemed to know a lot about the project. One afternoon, he asked me directly how involved I had been in developing the original concept. I hesitated for a moment, but then told him the truth. I explained that the idea started as my proposal and that I had shown it to Emily before the meeting where she presented it. He looked surprised and asked why I hadn't said anything earlier. I told him I didn't want to cause drama in the middle of the meeting, but that I also didn't feel comfortable watching someone else get full credit. Later that day, he spoke with Emily privately. I don't know exactly what was said, but the next morning he called both of us into his office and said that going forward the project would be listed as co-led by me and Emily. Emily was clearly upset after that meeting. She told me I embarrassed her and made it look like she was stealing ideas, which she claimed she wasn't doing. According to her, I should have just accepted the shared credit quietly instead of going to the boss and correcting the story. Since then, things have been tense. A few coworkers think I did the right thing by clarifying where the idea came from. Others say I should have let it go because workplace ideas are rarely owned by one person anyway. Emily barely talks to me now, except when necessary for work. And I've heard from another coworker that she's telling people I sabotaged her chance at leading a major project. I didn't intend to start conflict. I just didn't think it was fair to lose recognition for something I spent days developing. Still, part of me wonders if I should have handled it differently or just let the credit be shared without bringing it up. So AITA for telling our boss the campaign idea was originally mine after my coworker presented it as hers. AITA for refusing to help pay for my sister's wedding after my parents spent my college fund on her years ago. I, 31F, come from a family where money has always been a sensitive topic, mostly because my parents never handled it well. Growing up, they constantly talked about sacrificing everything for their kids. But in reality, most financial decisions were chaotic and impulsive. When I was a kid, my parents told both me and my younger sister Lily, 27F, that they had college funds set aside for us. They said our grandparents had contributed and they had been adding to it for years. Because of that promise, I planned my future assuming at least some tuition would be covered. When I was 17, about to apply to universities, my parents sat me down and told me something had come up. They explained that Lily had been accepted into an expensive private high school program for performing arts and that the opportunity was once in a lifetime. Apparently, they had decided to use most of the college savings to pay for her tuition, travel, and housing related to the program. I was shocked. They said there would still be some money left for my college, just not nearly as much. The reality was worse than what they described. By the time I started college, there was almost nothing left. I ended up taking out loans and working part-time throughout school. I do not regret getting my degree, but I graduated with a lot of debt that took years to pay off. Lily's performing arts career never really took off. She did a few small theater productions and worked various part-time jobs. My parents always defended the decision by saying they were supporting her dream. I try not to hold resentment. Lily did not force them to spend the money, and I know she was just a teenager at the time. Still, the financial difference between us affected my early adulthood a lot. While my friends were saving for houses or traveling, I was making loan payments every month. Over the last decade, I worked very hard to get into a stable financial position. I paid off my loans 2 years ago, built a solid emergency fund, and recently bought a small condo. Now we get to the current issue. Lily recently got engaged to her boyfriend Mark, 29M. I was genuinely happy for her. They've been together about 3 years and seem good together. A few months after the engagement, my parents started talking about wedding plans. Lily wants a fairly big wedding with around 150 guests at a countryside venue. The estimated cost is apparently around $40,000. My parents cannot afford to contribute much. They're still dealing with credit card debt and some medical bills. A couple weeks ago, my mom called me and asked if we could talk about family support. I thought she meant helping with planning or maybe DIY decorations. Instead, she suggested that I help pay for the wedding. Her reasoning was that I am currently the most financially stable person in the family and that weddings are important milestones. She also said that since Lily never got a real chance to build a career in performing arts, this wedding could be one beautiful moment where everything comes together. I laughed at first because I thought she was joking. She was not. My mom explained that if I contributed about $10,000, it would allow Lily to book the venue she really wants. I reminded her that the reason I only recently became financially stable was because I spent years paying off the loans that existed partly because my college fund was used for Lily. My mom said that was in the past, and the family needs to focus on the future. Later that week, Lily called me herself. She said she knew the request might seem awkward, but hoped I would consider it. She also mentioned that several of her friends' siblings helped pay for their weddings. I told her I love her, but I am not comfortable contributing that much money. She sounded disappointed, but said she understood. Unfortunately, the story did not end there. My parents have since started bringing it up constantly. My dad said that family support each other during important life events. My mom keeps pointing out that I recently renovated my kitchen and therefore clearly have extra money. Last Sunday at dinner, things got heated. My dad said something that really bothered me. He said that since Lily's education money helped shape who she is today, the family investment in her should continue. I responded that the family investment in her already cost me years of debt. The room went quiet after that. My parents accused me of being bitter and holding a grudge from something that happened when we were teenagers. Lily looked embarrassed and said she never wanted the situation to cause conflict. Now my parents are telling relatives that I am refusing to support my sister's wedding even though I can afford to help. Some relatives have started messaging me, saying it would be generous of me to contribute, especially since my parents sacrificed a lot raising us. From my perspective, I already absorbed the financial consequences of their earlier decision. I do not think it is fair to ask me to fund another major expense for Lily. At the same time, part of me worries that refusing will permanently damage my relationship with my family. So, AITA for refusing to help pay for my sister's wedding after my parents spent my college fund on her years ago. AITA for refusing to give my coworker credit for a project after she told everyone it was her idea. 27F, work in a marketing department of a mid-sized tech company. I have been here for about 3 years and generally enjoy my job. The environment is usually collaborative, and our team works closely together on campaigns and presentations. One of my coworkers, Jenna, 30F, joined the company about 8 months ago. At first, we got along pretty well. She is outgoing and confident, which helped her fit in quickly with the team. A couple of months ago, our manager asked everyone to come up with ideas for improving engagement on one of our company's social media platforms. The account had been stagnant for a while, and leadership wanted something fresh. I spent a few evenings working on a detailed concept. My idea was to create a weekly interactive series where customers could submit questions, vote on features, and see behind-the-scenes content from our development team. I put together a full outline with sample posts, graphics, and a rollout plan. Before presenting it to our manager, I mentioned the idea casually during lunch with a few coworkers, including Jenna. I described the general concept and said I was still polishing the details before submitting it. Jenna seemed interested and asked a few questions, but I did not think much of it at the time. A week later, we had a team meeting where people could pitch their ideas. When the meeting started, Jenna volunteered to go first. She began describing a weekly interactive social media series where customers could submit questions and vote on things. As she kept talking, I realized she was basically presenting my idea. Not just the general concept, but several specific details I had mentioned during lunch. I sat there stunned while she presented slides about it. The weird part was that she had clearly expanded on it and created her own version of graphics and mock-ups. But the core idea was still exactly what I had been working on. Our manager loved the proposal and asked Jenna if she could lead the project. At that point, I spoke up and said that the idea sounded very similar to something I had been developing and had mentioned to Jenna earlier. I explained that I had my own outline and documents ready. The room got quiet. Jenna immediately said she had been brainstorming the idea for weeks and that our lunch conversation had just been a coincidence. She said interactive content is a common marketing concept and that nobody owns ideas like that. Technically, she is not wrong about ideas overlapping, but the similarities were too specific for me to believe it was just coincidence. Our manager asked me to send my documents after the meeting. Later that day, I emailed my outline and drafts showing the timestamps for when I created them. A few coworkers who had been at the lunch conversation also mentioned that they remembered me describing something similar. After reviewing everything, our manager decided that I would lead the project since I had the earliest documentation. Jenna was clearly upset about that decision. She told me privately that I had embarrassed her in front of the whole team and that I should have spoken to her first instead of calling it out during the meeting. She said she would have been willing to collaborate if I had handled it more professionally. From my perspective, she presented my idea as her own in a room full of people. I did not see how confronting her privately would have helped once the presentation had already happened. Since then, things at work have been awkward. Jenna has told a few coworkers that I stole the project from her by rushing to claim credit. She argues that she put together the slides and refined the concept, so she deserved at least partial ownership. Some colleagues agree with me and say she should have acknowledged where the idea came from. Others think I should have offered to co-lead the project to keep the peace. My manager recently asked if I would be open to bringing Jenna onto the project team. I said she could participate like anyone else, but I am not comfortable giving her equal credit for the concept. Now, Jenna barely speaks to me except when absolutely necessary. The tension has also spread a bit across the team because people have taken different sides. What makes me second-guess myself is that maybe I could have handled the moment in the meeting differently. If I had waited until afterward to discuss it with the manager privately, maybe Jenna would not feel publicly called out. At the same time, if I had stayed silent, the project would likely be under her name right now. I worked really hard on that concept, and I feel like it would have been unfair to just let someone else take credit for it. Still, part of me wonders if standing up for myself in that moment made the situation worse than it needed to be. So now, I'm stuck in a tense work environment over something that started as a simple lunch conversation. AITA for refusing to give my coworker credit for the project after she presented an idea I had already told her about, as if it were her own. AITA for refusing to give my coworker credit for a project, even though she says the idea was originally hers. I, 30M, work at a mid-sized marketing company. I've been there for about 4 years and recently got promoted to a team lead position. My job now is to manage a small group of 5 people and oversee campaign projects for different clients. One of the people on my team is Claire, 28F. She has been at the company about a year and is generally well-liked. She's creative and enthusiastic, but sometimes she jumps between ideas quickly without fully developing them. About 3 months ago, we had a brainstorming meeting for a new client campaign. The client sells eco-friendly cleaning products and wanted a social media campaign that would stand out. During the meeting, everyone threw out different ideas. Claire mentioned something about doing a clean home challenge where people post before and after photos using the product. The idea was mentioned briefly, and then the conversation moved on because we had several other concepts to discuss. At the time, nobody really reacted strongly to it, and the meeting ended without a clear direction. After the meeting, I reviewed everyone's suggestions and started developing a concept that I thought could work. I remembered Claire's general idea, but expanded it into a full campaign plan. I turned it into a 30-day challenge with weekly themes, partnerships with small influencers, and a reward system where participants could win eco-friendly home kits. I spent a couple weeks refining the proposal, writing the strategy, building the timeline, and creating presentation materials. I also coordinated with the design team to create mock-ups for the challenge graphics. When I presented the campaign to upper management and the client, they loved it. The client approved it almost immediately, and the campaign launched last month. It's been performing extremely well so far with high engagement and a lot of user-generated content. After the presentation, Claire came up to me and said she felt hurt that I didn't mention her idea during the meeting. I told her the campaign was inspired by several brainstorming suggestions, including hers, but that I had developed the entire structure myself. She said that the core concept of a challenge involving before and after photos was clearly her idea and that it wouldn't exist without her mentioning it first. I told her that brainstorming meetings are meant to generate lots of rough ideas, and that part of my job as team lead is to develop those ideas into something workable. I also pointed out that many campaigns involve challenges or before and after visuals, so it's not exactly a completely unique concept. She seemed frustrated, but dropped the conversation at the time. A week later, during another team meeting, our department manager congratulated me on the campaign's success and said it was one of the best performing launches we've had that quarter. Before I could respond, Claire spoke up and said that the idea was actually hers originally. The room got quiet. My manager looked confused and asked what she meant. Claire explained that she had suggested the challenge concept in the initial brainstorming meeting and that I had built the campaign from her idea without giving her credit. I responded that while she had mentioned something similar briefly, the full strategy and execution plan were developed afterward by me and the rest of the team. After the meeting, Claire accused me of trying to take credit for her creativity because I'm the team lead. She said it's unfair that I get praise and recognition when she feels like she started the whole thing. I tried to explain again that brainstorming sessions involve dozens of small suggestions from different people and that the final campaign included many elements that were never discussed in that meeting. Now the situation has spread around the office. Some coworkers think Claire is overreacting and that turning a quick idea into a full campaign requires a lot more work than just mentioning it in a meeting. Others think I should have acknowledged her contribution during the presentation, even if the idea evolved significantly. Claire's been distant with me ever since, and apparently told a few people that I'm the type of manager who steals ideas from my team. I'm starting to wonder if I should have just mentioned her name when presenting the campaign to avoid all this conflict, even though the idea changed a lot for what she originally said. At the same time, I don't want to set a precedent where every small comment in a brainstorming meeting becomes a claim to ownership over the final project. So AITA for refusing to give my coworker credit for the campaign when she says the original idea came from her. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his family stay in my new house because they needed a place to crash for months. I, 33F, recently bought my first home. It's a modest 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. I've been working hard for years, saving up, and this is a big milestone for me. I finally signed the papers about 6 months ago, and I've been slowly getting everything set up, painting, furnishing, and making it feel like mine. I love having control over my space, decorating how I want, and just having a place that feels like my own sanctuary. My younger brother, Jason, 30M, lives in the same city but rents a small apartment with his wife, Laura, 29F, and their 2 kids, ages 3 and 5. Jason's apartment is tiny, and he's always complained about it. Over the years, he's casually mentioned wanting a bigger place, and I always try to empathize, but obviously, it wasn't my responsibility to fix his housing situation. A few weeks after I moved in, Jason called me and said they were in a tight spot. Apparently, their landlord was selling their apartment building, and they had to move out sooner than expected. They had some temporary arrangements with friends, but he said it wasn't ideal, especially with 2 kids. Then he dropped the part that made my stomach sink. He asked if they could stay at my house for a few months until they figured out their own place. I was caught off guard. I told him that while I understood their situation, I wasn't sure how practical it was. My house was just me and my cat, and I was still getting settled. He insisted it would just be temporary, maybe 2 or 3 months, and promised they wouldn't be a bother. I said I needed some time to think. I spent a few days weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, it's family, and I want to help. On the other, this was my home, the first place I could truly call my own. I had just started enjoying my independence, decorating how I liked, and even sleeping in peace without worrying about a toddler waking me up in the middle of the night. I realized that having them move in would essentially turn my space into their temporary apartment. I also thought about the strain it might put on my finances and personal boundaries, since I would have to share everything from the living space to my kitchen and bathroom. I finally told Jason that I couldn't have them stay. I explained that I wanted them to have stability, but my home wasn't the best place for a temporary stay. I suggested helping them look for rentals, offered to help with moving logistics, and even said I could watch the kids for a few hours here and there if needed, but having them live in my house for months wasn't something I could manage. Jason was upset. He said I was being selfish and that families should help each other out, especially in emergencies. He told me that if I were truly a sister, I would let them stay. Laura also called me later and said I was being unreasonable and that I had always been the privileged one who had everything handed to me. I told them again that it wasn't about money or being privileged. I had worked hard for this house and wanted to have it as my own space. I reminded them that I was offering other ways to help, but living in my house full-time wasn't feasible for me. Since then, things have been tense. Jason hasn't spoken to me much, and I've heard from other family members that they think I turned my back on family, and that I should have let them stay even if it was inconvenient. My mom even called and suggested that I reconsider, saying that it's just a few months and that I should make sacrifices for family. Some friends have told me I was right to set boundaries, while others think I should have at least tried to accommodate them. I feel bad for my nieces and nephew. They're sweet kids, and I would love to spend time with them, but I also feel like this is my home and my first real experience of living independently. I don't want to ruin my relationship with Jason and Laura, but I also can't imagine turning my house into a temporary shelter for them. I offered help in every other way I could think of, helping with the move, helping find rentals, even babysitting occasionally, but living under the same roof for months? That feels like too much for me. So AITA for refusing to let my brother and his family stay in my new house for several months, even though they say they need a place to crash. AITA for refusing to give my brother's fiancée a job at my company, even though my family says I'm being unfair. I, 35 am, run a mid-sized marketing firm that I started about 10 years ago. It started with just me freelancing, and over time it grew into a company with around 40 employees. I have a solid team that I trust, and I take hiring very seriously because one bad hire can affect multiple projects and the company's reputation. My younger brother, Jake, 31M, has always been ambitious but has a history of being unreliable. He has a series of short-term jobs, most of which ended because of missed deadlines, poor communication, or unprofessional behavior. My parents have always said that he's finding his path, but honestly, he has struggled to hold steady employment. About a year ago, Jake got engaged to his fiancée, Emma, 29F. I met her a few times, and she seemed nice enough, though a little reserved. Recently, I found out that she was looking for a job, and Jake mentioned to my parents that he thought she might work in my company. I was not approached directly at first, which is unusual because he normally comes to me with these ideas. A few weeks ago, Jake finally asked me if Emma could be considered for a position at my firm. He said she had experience in administrative roles and could be a good fit. I told him honestly that while I am open to hiring qualified candidates, I would need to see her resume, have a proper interview, and ensure she meets the standards for the position. I explained that I could not guarantee a job just because she is family. Jake seemed annoyed, but said he understood. A few days later, I got a formal resume from Emma. The problem was that her resume had several red flags. She had short stints at multiple companies, often under a year, with vague descriptions of her responsibilities. She also had some significant gaps in employment. I had to be honest with myself. Based on what I know about my company's needs, I would be taking a serious risk by hiring her. I told Jake that I could not offer her a position at this time. Jake reacted poorly. He accused me of being unfair and said that families should support each other. He said that I was being elitist and not valuing loyalty or trust. He also started saying that I was punishing him by not giving his fiancée a chance, and implied that this was me being selfish. After that, my parents got involved. They called me several times, saying that I should reconsider because it would make everyone happy, and family comes first. My mom even suggested that I could make a temporary position just to get her started. My dad said I was being rigid and risking family relationships for a company that's doing fine without her. I try to explain that this is not personal. I make hiring decisions based on skills, experience, and fit, not relationships. I pointed out that if I hired someone who was not qualified, it could jeopardize client relationships and create tension within the team. I also told them that Emma could apply for the next open position and go through the same process as everyone else. None of this seemed to matter. My parents started making comments about how I treat Jake unfairly, and Jake keeps bringing it up during family gatherings. He even told some relatives that I don't care about family success. The tension has escalated to the point where I've started avoiding family events. It feels like any time we gather, the conversation turns to me being selfish or heartless. I genuinely feel like I am being pressured to compromise my professional standards to make my family feel better, and I do not think that is fair. I also worry that if I give in, it sets a precedent. If I hire Emma now, despite her lack of qualifications, everyone will assume family connections override merit. That could create long-term issues for my company. I have considered the possibility of giving her a small, temporary internship or shadowing role, but I fear even that could cause friction with my team. Some of my employees have been here for years and have seen what happens when family members are given positions without merit. Morale could be affected. At the same time, I do not want to be labeled as the bad brother or cause lasting resentment within my family. Jake and Emma are clearly upset, and my parents have not stopped trying to convince me. I feel trapped between maintaining professional integrity and preserving family relationships. So, AITA for refusing to give my brother's fiancée a job at my company, even though my family says I'm being unfair. AITA for refusing to help my brother financially, even though he claims he is in a crisis after refusing to help me for years. I, 34 am, come from a family where money has always been a touchy subject. My parents try to raise my brother, Kevin, 36 am, and me to be independent, but Kevin never really followed that advice. He has a history of making poor financial choices, bouncing between jobs, and relying on others for help. I, on the other hand, have been working steadily since college, managing my expenses carefully, and have managed to save a significant amount. I own my own apartment, have a stable career, and feel secure financially. For years, Kevin has asked me for loans or bailouts whenever he got into trouble, and for the most part, I either said no or offered very small amounts, never exceeding what I could afford without affecting my own life. I also tried to give him advice about budgeting and planning, but he rarely followed it and instead continued making decisions that led him deeper into debt. About a week ago, Kevin called me in a panic. He claimed that his car broke down, his apartment is about to be evicted, and he doesn't have money to pay for groceries. He was frantic, saying he needed about $3,000 immediately or he would lose everything. According to him, his situation was dire, and he insisted I was the only person who could help him. At first, I listened and asked him questions to understand what happened. He explained that he spent the last few months taking trips he couldn't afford, buying expensive clothes for work he barely uses, and lending money to friends who never paid him back. Now his landlord and the auto repair shop were threatening legal action if he didn't pay. I told him bluntly that I was not going to give him $3,000. I reminded him that for years he has refused to help me when I needed small amounts of money or moral support when I had a rough time in college. I explained that I have a responsibility to myself and my future, and giving him money now would not solve his long-term problems. He interrupted me, saying that I was being heartless, that we are family, and that if I truly cared about him, I would help. I tried offering alternatives. I suggested he look into local assistance programs for rent, check with the car insurance company about emergency coverage, and create a strict repayment plan if he could get a smaller loan from someone else. He became defensive and said that none of those options were good enough and that I should just help because I am in a position to do so. He also brought up that I have been promoted recently and now have a higher income, implying that I am obligated to help because I can. I pointed out that just because someone earns more doesn't mean they are required to bail out a family member who has consistently refused to be responsible. That did not go over well. After I said no, he started sending me messages calling me selfish, cruel, and accusing me of abandoning family. He even posted a vague message on social media implying that a brother had left him to struggle while enjoying financial comfort himself. I have mutual friends with him, and now some of them are messaging me asking why I won't help family in need, which is uncomfortable and frustrating. Part of me feels guilty because I am aware that he is in a tough situation. I know losing his apartment and car would be a huge stress and make his life extremely difficult in the short term. I understand that family sometimes helps each other, but at the same time, I have seen him create crises like this repeatedly. Whenever I or others offered advice or smaller amounts to help him get back on track, he rarely followed through and then found himself in trouble again. I even offered a compromise. I said I could help him budget, negotiate with creditors, or even help him find a temporary place to stay with friends or a shelter program until he could stabilize his finances. He rejected all of it, claiming that these solutions were humiliating and that I was supposed to provide a real solution, meaning money. Our parents have stayed out of it mostly, but my mom mentioned that she feels I should help because he might not survive the crisis otherwise. My dad agrees with me privately, but worries that if I don't help, family relationships could become strained permanently. I also feel frustrated because it seems like Kevin expects me to rescue him simply because I am able to. He does not seem to consider that enabling his reckless behavior only creates a cycle where I am constantly asked to bail him out and the real problem never gets solved. I want to help, but not at the cost of encouraging irresponsibility. Some friends say I am right to set boundaries and that giving in now would not help him in the long term. Others say that family should help when someone is truly in crisis, regardless of past behavior. I understand that perspective, but I feel like after years of repeated behavior, it is reasonable to expect someone to take responsibility for their life, even if it's uncomfortable. Now, Kevin has stopped talking to me directly, but continues to post passive-aggressive comments online. Some extended family members are asking me why I won't help, and it is causing tension at gatherings. I feel trapped because I'm trying to protect my own financial stability and teach him responsibility, but I also don't want to be seen as heartless or to permanently damage my relationship with my brother. AITA for refusing to give my brother $3,000 after he repeatedly refused to help me in the past and continues to create financial crises for himself. AITA for refusing to let my brother move back in with me, even though he claims I owe him after I bought my own house. 32F, recently bought my first house in a quiet suburb. I've been living in a rented apartment for the last 10 years since college, saving aggressively, and finally managed to afford a modest 3-bedroom house with a small backyard. It's not huge or luxurious, but it's mine, and I'm very proud of it. The process of buying it was exhausting, dealing with inspections, mortgage approvals, and renovations, but it was entirely worth it. My younger brother, Ben, 28M, has had a rougher time. He dropped out of college, has bounced between low-paying jobs, and has never lived independently for more than a few months. For the past 5 years, he's been living with our parents in another state. He frequently complains about the cost of living, lack of job opportunities, and how unfair life is to him. He's generally intelligent, but tends to be lazy and entitled, according to friends and family I've spoken to. He also has a habit of exaggerating stories to make himself look like the victim. A few weeks after I moved into my new house, Ben called me. He said he had lost his job and his landlord was evicting him. He explained that he had no savings, no friends nearby, and that he desperately needed a place to stay. Initially, I felt sympathetic, but I was also aware of his history of relying on others instead of taking responsibility. I asked him if he had tried applying for other jobs or looking for temporary housing, and he said he had, but nothing worked out. He then asked if he could move in with me temporarily. I told him that, unfortunately, I wasn't in a position to have someone living with me yet. My house was new, I had to adjust to living alone, and I wasn't sure he would respect the rules. Ben immediately got upset and said that I owed him. He reminded me that I had lived with our parents rent-free for years while saving money, and that, in his view, I had essentially been subsidized by him and the family. He argued that now that I have a house, it's my moral obligation to help him, since I had benefited from their support in the past. I was shocked. I explained that my parents' support during my early 20s was part of growing up in a family, not a personal debt to Ben. I also pointed out that I had worked hard, saved diligently, and made sacrifices to afford this house, and it wasn't fair for him to expect me to give up space and privacy because he didn't plan ahead. Ben said that I was selfish and that I should help family first. The argument escalated. Ben accused me of being ungrateful and cold-hearted. He said I was betraying the family and that no one would help him now because I had abandoned him. I tried to calm him down, suggesting alternative solutions. He could look for a roommate situation, temporary sublets, or reach out to local charities. He dismissed every suggestion, claiming they were not real options and only a family member could provide the help he needed. Over the next few weeks, I noticed that mutual friends started contacting me, some subtly questioning why I wouldn't help my brother. A few relatives also sent messages implying I should be more generous, hinting that my parents might be disappointed in me. I felt increasingly guilty, but at the same time, I knew that having him in my house could create a lot of stress. Ben has a history of leaving dishes in the sink for days, ignoring household rules, and being generally disrespectful of shared spaces. I also knew that accommodating him would require me to compromise my own comfort and privacy, which I wasn't ready to do. Recently, Ben escalated things further. He sent me a long message accusing me of monetizing my freedom and saying that buying a house without considering him was proof I didn't care about family. He even implied that he might show up unannounced and stay for a few days to remind me of my obligations. I told him directly that showing up uninvited would be trespassing and that I would have to involve authorities if he did. He didn't respond to that part, but continued to send angry messages. Some friends have told me I should at least let him stay for a few weeks as a temporary solution, even if I charge a small rent. Others say that family doesn't entitle him to live in my house, especially given his past behavior and my efforts to buy it independently. I feel torn because I don't want to be seen as heartless, But I also know that giving in could set a precedent where he expects me to bail him out every time he encounters difficulty. I have considered helping him in other ways, like providing a small financial contribution toward a rental or helping him search for jobs, but he insists that nothing else will do except staying at my place. The tension is growing, and I feel like either way I choose, I'm going to upset someone. I also worry that if I allow him to move in, it could damage my relationship with him long term because resentment might build on both sides. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move into my house, even though he claims I owe him for living rent-free with our parents while I saved up for it. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.